Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thanks for joining the HCM or Hcmx user group. We will start in a few minutes. I see a lot of folks joining, so we'll give it a minute. Okay, good. Let's get started. Thanks once again. So today we have an interesting topic to cover, but as usual, before we start the session, regular housekeeping items and agenda that we want to cover today. So let me. Okay, all set. So in today's session, we are going to show something interesting, as I mentioned, and it is a roadmap item. So one of the reasons I'm showing this confidential information disclaimer. So as you see on the screen, this roadmap is subject to change and is therefore not a commitment or a representation by Micro Focus to develop, modify, market, or deliver a software product, code or functionality, or to meet any specific timetable. So yeah, it's a regular disclaimer. Good. So I'm going to do a short introduction about Hcmx, and then here with me, my colleague Jody Bear. He has joined, and he's going to present the Hcmx DevOps Workbench, and you can ask as much as questions. And there is a Q&A section. Please post your questions there. And a bit of housekeeping. So as we all know, this webinar is primarily focusing the customers, partners, and our practitioners who gain a good amount of exposure on a different set of features across different pillars. I mean to say the automation or governance or even the portal experience. And we have been conducting this for past close to 2 years, I believe, and there is a lot of team who participates from various streams. So this is the URL where you can share with your colleagues to register, and they can also get benefit. And there is a community page in the Micro Focus community portal. So there we upload all the videos, which we usually do it, in this session. So if you haven't watched any previous sessions, please go to this site and then you can watch those recordings, and do reach out to us if you have any queries. Okay, good. So, well, I'm not going to again go over all this stuff because this is where we usually, talk in detail. But at a high level, if you look at, as I mentioned, 3 core values: flexible automation, effective governance, and AI-based user experience, where we provide number of value-added services in terms with respect to the flexible automation, starting with the 8,000 plus flows and 150 plus integrations and broader multi-cloud or even hybrid cloud support, and the image aggregation feature, or be it a blueprint, which can help you to create the service design, to create a simple offering which just offers maybe a simple compute or a full stack application. And then on the compliance side, I believe last the last demo, as part of the previous user group meeting, you must have seen the closed loop control process, which we demonstrated, of course, using the complete end-to-end Hcmx features. So again, this time also we are going to touch upon some of the governance aspects. So as you see that, we are enriching our features with respect to the governance and guardrail. So that's what you're going to see a lot. And of course, you see that optimized cloud spend is also one of the feature that you can use it for to gain the visibility of the cloud spend and get the recommendations. And there is an internal CMDB which is present, which can help you to keep track of the CI items and the service dependency between the services. And the last but not least, the AI-based user experience, which brings a wide variety of ways to request for a service, be it a self-service portal or a simple mobile app, or even APIs, or even there is a technology, cloud slang technology, where you can request for a service. I mean, these are all usually the tool sets that developer would use to request for a service and manage it. And there is also a virtual agent where the user can interact with the virtual agent, search for a particular or even ask for a particular service which virtual agent can give, and then they can request for it. So at a high level, if you look at, these are all the use cases that the product supports, but not limited to. As you see, there are a set of use cases specifically for end users and specifically for IT operations, which you saw in the previous slide. I've just grouped it over here, and we have explained in most of the sessions. So I'm going to skip it for now, but today's focus area will be for the end users, and I'm not going to open up everything now. I'm going to let Joe open up. So, well, I think with that, I can hand over the forum to Joe, who can start the presentation. Over to you, Joe. You may want to just quickly introduce yourself and please.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. That's a good intro. I'm actually going to share my own screen. So can you make me a presenter, please?
Yeah. Yes, you are a presenter. Please.
All right. Let's show my screen. All right. Hcmx DevOps Workbench. So first of all, thank you, everyone, for being here. And I think the first reaction that you have is, what the heck is Hcmx DevOps Workbench? Because this is the very first time that we're going to talk about it in, I would say, an open audience, right? We're going to do a universe session around it. So in a way, you guys are getting a little bit of a preview. And because it's a roadmap item, again, I can skip this slide now because Alex did a really great job at making it clear that what we're showing today is very much looking forward. And he also did a very great job at explaining what Hcmx is. And I assume, since you guys are users, you have a pretty good idea. What we're going to show today sits mainly in that top layer in the product. So it's all about governance. Let's put it that way. This is a very high level, what I would call positioning statement value prop. And don't worry, we're going to make it very clear to you, hopefully, in this presentation, what we're actually going to do. In a nutshell, right? If I would have to summarize the DevOps Workbench in one line, I would say, it's not going to solve all your issues for moving to DevOps, but it's going to take care of some very important operational and compliance related challenges, specifically around infrastructure as code. And that may not be very clear at the beginning, right? Because maybe you're asking, yeah, what kind of operational challenges are you talking about here? And to make it clear, we're going to tell you a little bit of a story. I'm actually trying to go to the next slide. Yep. And these are our protagonists. And roughly speaking, you can divide them into categories. You have the developers on the left side. So those are Shweta and Darcy. And as you can see, we kind of have split their responsibilities into an application developer and an IAC developer, where IAC in this whole presentation, whenever I say IAC, it means infrastructure as code, right? I'm going to actually give you like a mini crash course in infrastructure as code because I'm not sure that everybody is familiar with it. But again, whenever I say IAC, I mean infrastructure as code. Now, developers, of course, are developing on something, whether it's a product or a project or a value stream, whatever you call it in your organization. And usually there is a project manager for that. And she's in the upper right. So that's Anne. And again, this role can have many different names in many different organizations. But what we're trying to capture is the role that kind of needs to keep this team at bay when it comes to resource usage and the costs that they create. So Anne is typically the role in the organization who, at the end of the quarter, when the team went over budget, will actually get a mail say, "Hey, your team went over budget. It's not a big deal, but can you take a look why this was, and why where basically the money is being spent by your team," right? So it's that kind of a role that we're trying to capture here. And then in the lower right, we have David. And David, I think David is going to be most familiar to, because we're an operations crowd here. So David is the operations manager. And David's essentially just is responsible for compliance, making sure that the lights stay on, that there are no security vulnerabilities anywhere that can cause essentially operations to block or to stop. Right? He needs to make sure that everything keeps running in production. So those are our protagonists. What we're going to talk about today a lot is infrastructure as code. So I'm going to, like I said, maybe hopefully a 1 minute. It's hard for me to stop talking about it because it's fantastic technology. Infrastructure as code, what does it mean? It means that you're going to codify your final configurations. It's basically codification of configuration. And if that doesn't make sense, let me give you a very quick example here. And I'm going to use Terraform here today. There are multiple technologies that you can use for infrastructure as code. Terraform is a very, very popular one. So I'm going to use that one. And if I open here a very, very minimal, more minimal than the one that was on the slide, I think. This is a very, very concise infrastructure as code file where we codify configuration, because what I'm doing here, I'm saying, hey, with Terraform, I'm going to, in AWS, create a VM with a firewall around it. And I'm also going to create some EBS storage, right? Maybe that VM needs a database, and I'm going to store that database on that EBS storage. But what you look at here is not a template, it's really the final configuration, right? Because I'm already saying, hey, it's a micro, I'm using that AMI, and I'm opening this and this port, and this is the CIDR, and this is the name of my EBS volume. So all the configuration for that VM is actually stored in this code here, right? And the beauty of infrastructure as code is that we can check this in something like Git, which allows us to version these things and very easily move from one configuration to another by changing something, checking it in, having it provisioned by Terraform. And you can also then easily roll back, of course, right? Because you're going to have multiple versions checked in. Basically, all the beautiful things that developers can already do with code today with something like Git, now all of a sudden become available for operations as well, right? That is the core of infrastructure as code and why it is becoming so popular, right? Now, a couple of poll questions. And for the poll today, I've actually pasted something in the chat window. So if you want to participate to the poll today, we encourage that you do. Let me show you what it will look like. If you follow that link, you will come to this page here where you will see how many, like 9 questions. Now we're gonna go through these questions one by one as we move through the slides. So, if you feel a need to scroll down and answer all of them, that's fine. But at regular points in the presentation, I'm gonna pause, give you some time, explain the question as I'm doing right now. So a very first question that we have, right, because we were talking about infrastructure as code, we gave a little bit of a background. Are you using it, right? And who is using it in your organization? Is it DevOps teams? Is it Ops teams? Because it's becoming more and more popular for just Ops purposes as well. And let's say right now or in the coming year, right? If you're seriously having a plan right now to move to infrastructure as code, that's okay. Then you can check the checkbox as well. So we're very curious to learn. Again, go to the chat. It's in the lower right of this GoToWebinar control panel thing that you will all have, I think. In the chat, I pasted the link. So just let us know which teams are currently using it in your organization. All right. Going back All right, I'm going to continue the story. Well, actually, there's a second poll question. I think we're doing 3 in a go here. Yeah, okay. So if you're using it, if you're planning to use it, what we're curious to learn is, what technology are you using? Like, I'm using Terraform here today for the demos that I'm going to do. I'm using the open source version of Terraform, which is actually what we're using within Micro Focus as well. But Terraform also has a commercial offering that's called Terraform Cloud or Enterprise. So if you're using that, and again, we're talking about your strategic choice here, right? Because if you're using Cloud or Enterprise, and you're also using some open source here and there, you should check Cloud and Enterprise, because that means that is your strategic choice for your ISC deployments. And if you're using something else, for instance, Pulumi is coming up. It's an emerging technology. Please specify. You can type your answer. Here, I'm not going to do it, right? I don't want to skew the survey here, but you can basically check like one here, or then say other if you're using something else, right? And then the third question, which may be a little bit trickier, and yeah, if you don't know the answer, that's fine. But if your developers use it, like, how are they using it? Are they using it on their laptops? Like I'm basically going to do here, right? If I save this file, and if I call Terraform apply, Terraform is actually going to create that VM. I have it linked up to my AWS account. I'm not going to do it because we're a little bit short on time already. But if I would hit enter, Terraform is going to create that VM here in my AWS account. Now, that's how easy it is to create stuff with Terraform. But what we're getting at it, that also means it's pretty dangerous, right? It's super easy to create things with Terraform. It also means it's super easy to lose control. And that's what we're going to talk about a lot in this presentation, right? So are your developers using it on the command line like I'm doing here, or is it all structured via the build pipelines? That basically means that something like Jenkins will run, fetch the code from Git as we described earlier, and then it will build something on behalf of the developer. Or maybe it's both, right? Maybe you say, it's a mix in organization. Developers are allowed to do it themselves as well. So I switch back to the presentation here. In that case, you would basically select both here for question 3, which I'm trying to do here, and it's not working. I don't know why. Okay, but hopefully it's working for you. All right, so 3 very short questions, just because we're curious to learn a little bit how y'all are using infrastructure as code. All right, so we kind of discussed all these beautiful benefits, and you heard me say, well, now developers are already used to all these benefits, and now this is opening the door for them to use those same techniques to also create their own infrastructure. So what we're seeing a lot with a lot of our clients right now is that development teams are starting to say, hey, we want to use infrastructure as code. We just want to create our own service. Well, in a way, it are designs, right? Because you're designing in code, but they say we want to create our own services in the cloud with something like Terraform in this case. And that's all fine, right? This is the developer's dream. And we're going to put this desire on this slide here that we're going to build up in this presentation. Project managers, they don't like it that much, right? Because as I showed you, it's very, very easy to create stuff with infrastructure as code. But what if I would actually run that demo, and then at the end of this presentation, I forget to clean it up, right? It would just be running until who knows for how long. At the end of the month, I would get a bill from Amazon, and I would say, oh, crap, yeah, I didn't clean it up after the user group, right? Now, multiply that with 1,000 or a couple of hundreds if you have that amount of developers. And you can imagine if there is no good control over all these things, it's very easy to create lots of things with Terraform that people forget about. And of course, those things are not free. They cost money when they run in AWS or Azure or Google, right? So Anne is, of course, very worried, because if developers are just going to create their own infrastructure now, she says, yeah, that for sure is going to blow up the budget, right? And as you already have guessed, the Workbench is going to provide a solution for this, of course. Yeah, that's kind of where we're getting at. So I'm trying to explain why we need something like the Workbench in the new world of infrastructure as code. So we're going to give these desires a place on our slide here. So there's Anne. So she says, resource sprawl, unnecessary costs. I don't like that. And now we're moving to David. Remember, David, IT operations, his world is all about compliance for him, right? He wants to see what's going on. because in the end, it's it's his responsibility to make sure that it all keeps running. So he surely doesn't like teams using infrastructure as code, because he says, yeah, if everybody starts to create different stuff, how the heck am I ever going to support this in production, right? And if people open the wrong ports, they may create security vulnerabilities. So he for sure is very, very opposed to development teams using infrastructure as code themselves. And again, we're going to see how the Workbench is going to solve this problem. So we're going to give his concerns a place on the slide here. So this kind of nicely groups this governance challenge, right? In the end, it's all about governance, because the project manager wants to govern from a financial perspective. Operations manager as well, but for the operations manager, we're focusing more on the compliance thing, because that's a little bit more important for him, right? But it's a mix. It's like, don't think of these people on the right here as individual people, but think of it as roles, responsibilities. It may even be the same person in some organization, right? But someone cares about costs and someone cares about compliance. And for compliance, for sure, it's going to be someone in operations, right? So, bit of a question here. So if you, again, right, if you go to the questions, if you have selected here that IC is being used, right, or you're planning to use it, we want to measure basically your current needs a little bit. So we're asking you to prioritize, and again, let me show you how to do this. So you will be able to basically drag and drop. Oh, I know where it doesn't work. I'm in the I'm in the creator view. Yeah, this is going to work. So you can drag and drop here these things here in order of priority. So very easy. And let's quickly discuss what we basically want to measure a little bit if that pain that I just described, if it exists a little bit in your organization. So if you could have something tomorrow to fix your most urgent problem, would it be around having basic insights, like knowing, hey, who deployed, which teams are using infrastructure as code, and who deployed what for which business purpose, and maybe some topology views. So basically knowing the who, what, where, and why of things, right? Who deployed what, where, why, for what particular reason. That's what we call basic insights. Next step is managing the costs, right? Because costs, of course, that requires a little bit, I would say, more, try to find the right word here. Sophistication, that's the right word. I found it, sophistication, because this means you need to grab those AWS bills, which contain, or Azure, which contains your actual costs, and now start mapping these to these deployments and then back to business budgets, right? That's kind of what we're talking about here. Not just the insights is the start, but also mapping it to budgets, approvals. So this moves into the FinOps sphere, if you want. So this is basically plugging in the use of infrastructure as code into FinOps. And then the last one is more about compliance, right? So this is basically what I was talking about when I was telling David's story. How do we ensure that what people are creating is actually compliant? Let me give you an example. Let me give you an example here, a real world example. The main. And we're going to see later how the Workbench can catch this, but it's probably not very smart. Let's say if this is behind a load balancer, I should not be opening a very low port below 1024. I think we're all a bit technical on this call. We all know that ports below 1024 require root access to run on a Linux system. And if you're behind a load balancer, there's absolutely no reason why you should do that, right? You should use a higher port, which means that if that server happens to be hacked, at least I don't have root access on that system. Yeah, so this is very much a no-go. And here, why would anyone create an EBS volume without encryption in production? I don't know, right? So this is also asking for trouble here, because I'm creating storage, EBS storage, but it's not encrypted, which is also not a very good idea, right? So those are some examples of breaking compliance, because I bet David doesn't. Well, I know David doesn't like people creating stuff like that, right? So I hope while you were talking, you had some time to basically go to the pool and wiggle these things around a little bit. Again, so one most important for you. So let's say you say, yeah, maybe you have insights and costs already covered, and you say, that compliance thing sounds interesting, and put that one at the top here. Right? Yeah, we very much appreciate your interaction today. It's going to help us to improve what we're creating. Last pain, another pain that I want to bring to the table that has to do with development these days, because development these days happens in the cloud. Teams want to do it on their own, go to the cloud directly, which means they need credentials. But credential management is a pain, and development teams are typically not the best. They're very great at developing and innovating, but they're not the best at administering things like credentials, right? So what we see at a lot of our customers is that this is a problem. Things like credentials expire, developers don't know where to renew them or where to get them in the first place. They share them, which you shouldn't do. Nobody knows who is using which credential. So this has nothing to do with infrastructure as code as such, but this is also an operational issue that can block development, right? If credentials expire and no one knows how to renew them, it can cost day of development because your developers don't have access to the cloud, right? So it's an operational issue that we also want to solve with the Workbench. So let's put that on our slide as well. And that gives us a reasonably good overview of all these stakeholder requirements. So lots of problems to solve. Let's talk a little bit about what we're now going to do with the DevOps Workbench. I'm going to order things in 2 dimensions. So I'm first going to talk about high-level features organized per persona. And you see a lot of white space at the bottom of the slide where we're going to add other personas. And then on the next slide, I'm going to show you the roadmap where we're going to have these same features, but organized per delivery point, per drop point. So organized over a time axis, if you want. Right? So if we all agree that those problems, and we really hope so, that's kind of what we want to get with the pool, that these problems that we just described is something that you're experiencing, then if you think about what high-level features are needed at a very high level, well, project managers need visibility into what's going on, right? And we're going to take a look in a minute at some early designs, what we think that should look like. You also need some governance, and a very cool way to do that would be subscription-based, right? Because you guys know we have a subscription-based model with things like approval processes. You can say things like if something costs more than a certain threshold, you need to do multiple approvals. Subscriptions also control the life cycle, so you kind of know when things are supposed to end. So actually, this problem is already solved with subscriptions. If only there was a way how we could tie subscriptions together with infrastructure as code deployments, that would solve the problem, right? And again, you probably understood this is what we're going to do with the DevOps Workbench. And then ideally, Anne doesn't want to clean things up herself. She wants automatic cleanup of all this. If developers create stuff and they forget to clean up, ideally this cleanup happens automatically. And we're going to see how we can also do this with a subscription-based model, right? For operations managers, kind of the same thing, visibility. They will have a different type of view. So I'm going to show you again some early mockups that we have. So stay tuned for that. When we talk about secret management, like I said, developers, not typically the best people to do that themselves. So it would be really cool if David could offer secret management as a service to developers. And he also wants compliance guardrails. And if these two don't make immediate clear to you, I'm going to give a demo of a concept demo of what we mean by this. Okay? So keep these two in mind because the demo is coming next. And then for developers, we're getting a bit technical here. They need a remote state backend for Terraform. I'll describe in detail what that means as well in a bit. And so also they want automatic cleanup. Also the developers don't want to do it themselves, and for sure doesn't want to do it. But also the developer says, yeah, why can't this be automated? If I forget to clean up something, that should happen automatically, right? So we're also going to do that. Self-service development instances, I'll talk about that later as well. And then centralized secret management, it's offered as a service by David, but the consumers are the developers. So they're, of course, very, very happy because they don't actually have to remember this themselves. And let me show you what this looks like. All right. It's time for its demo time. Okay, so let me show clear. What do we have here? I have a command line. I hope you're familiar a little bit with the command line. So here we have that main. Here we have that file that describes what I'm going to create. Again, I hope you're all familiar with VI. Right, this is just a text editor. So when I say vi main.tf, I'm simply opening that file and we're taking a look what's in this file. So remember, I'm trying to provision something here, right? So imagine I'm Darcy, and I'm going to give you a shortened version of the demo today. I'm going to try to run this with the Workbench. Then first of all, I need to log in, DWB login. And after from here, yep, we're all set. Okay. So darcy.ling at microfocus.com. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. Specified password. So what we're doing right now is we're logging in to the Hcmx backend, and DWB, you guessed it, stands for DevOps Workbench, right? So this is our command line wrapper, and we're logged in. So this is great. From time to time, I'm going to issue a clear command, which just clears my terminal. And then I'm going to bring your focus back to the center of the screen like this. Yeah, because the thing that you should focus on will be in the middle of the screen here. Remember, we're trying to apply something with Terraform. So, and it's very easy to use the Workbench because you just put DWB in front of everything else that you would normally do. So instead of running Terraform apply, you just put DWB in front of it, and DWB will run first and will help the developer. Because we're Darcy, we want to provision something, but it's our first day on the job, like I said, and they didn't give me my credentials. Crap. Again, we have that problem that I described earlier. In very many organizations, Darcy would not know, oh, where do I actually get the cloud credentials for what I'm supposed to do, right? With the Workbench, we're taking her hand and we're guiding her, because it says here, yeah, no credentials found. Okay, that's great. What do? Oh, check your Workbench secret. So she runs a command and she sees, interesting, DWB secret list. That must mean I can run this command. So we're running the secrets. We're looking in the secret store, and lo and behold, there is no secret. So Darcy says, yep, okay, that makes sense. But we also tell her where to get secrets, because let's check the ESM catalog. I'm going to clear here and DWB for the syntax, and she says, oh, offering, that means there's no catalog offering and list. Okay, so DWB ESM catalog, no, offering lists. So she looks in the catalog to see what offerings was there, because the Workbench told her. And we're pulling up all the offers that have been exposed to this team. And she says, translation, no, don't need it. Workday, don't need it. SAP, no. Oh, fantastic. Credentials for Amazon Web Services, the 745. That's exactly what I need. Now, I know the syntax by heart is DWB ESM offering. Subscribe. I need to move this thing here. Subscribe -- offering. ID 745 -- name my AWS. Can't give us any name. Let's at least spell it correctly. All right, this should work. Yep. So what we're doing here is we're actually tapping into the self-service offering that David has set up for credential management. This works. So if we now look into the secret list in our secret store, then Darcy has a secret that gives her access to Amazon. She doesn't even need to know what the username and what the key and the secret key are. She just needs to know, I have the right, I can create infrastructure in my team's account. So she's good to go. So that's what we talk about with solving the problem of secret management in a very, very easy way. Now remember, what we're actually trying to do as Darcy is provision that infrastructure as code, right? So, but before it told us you don't have credentials. So let's try that again. DWB Terraform apply. Now the Workbench sees that we have credentials, so it's going to pull those credentials down, and now it is actually going to run policy checks that David has configured. So it's going to take the code, and before we hand over the code to Terraform, it is going to check coding best practices, and this is all passing. And we're not going to focus on this, but here, this is the most important thing. We're going to focus on the compliance policies. And remember, what I'm trying to explain to you is this point: compliance guardrails for IC developers now, right? So we're going to take a look at how David sets this up. And here you see it, right? Because I was trying to create infrastructure, but it's blocking me. It says you're violating a policy on line 15. Your VPC does not allow ports below 1024 to be opened. So Darcy opens the file. She goes to line 15, or if it's a large file, line 2021, I don't know. And she says, oh yes, of course, this is against the rule. I should use ports that are higher than 80 because of what I described earlier. Now, if we would run it again, I'm going to shorten my demo a little bit. It would catch the second error here. It would say, hey, you're trying to create storage and you don't have it encrypted. So it would tell Darcy you need to fix that as well. And the way how you do that is you say encrypt is true. No, PMS key ID, bit of Terraform syntax here is JDBear PMS key. I don't have one for Darcy. I'm using my own. You will forgive me for this. Encrypted is true. PMS key ID. Yep. So this is correct syntax. So I fixed the errors, right? And we're going to try again because so far we haven't given that code to Terraform yet, right? It's always got blocked and caught by the Workbench. So we're helping the developer to create, code that adheres to the best practices in the company, which is what developers want. Typically, developers they don't want to violate the rules, but they're basically asking, show me what I should do, like, without having me read like hundreds of pages of PDFs and documentation. No. So this is really attractive for developers because this in real time tells them, hey, you need to change that, tweak that a little bit. Can do that, just change it, which is a very, very nice experience because it's all real time. Good. We now have compliant codes. Now we're going to do the thing that I talked about earlier, where actually my infra, we're going to wrap it in a subscription, right? And I'll come back to that in a minute. So now we're invoking Terraform. Now that VM got created, now we're actually creating a subscription with that name, my infra. And that has all been done. So clear DWB. If I now do DWB ESM subscription list, I should see 2 subscriptions, one for my credential and one for my Terraform deployment. Yes, so here's a 745 that we subscribed to earlier. And here is a subscription that represents my Terraform deployment, right? And that brings us, okay, that now moves us beyond the compliance. So I'll come back to this in a minute, what we can do with these subscriptions. But you basically saw a demo of what it means for David to be able to set compliance guardrails, right? The developers have no way of creating infrastructure that violates one of these compliance guardrails that have been set by David. So, okay. Like I said, this slide here is going to now organize all of this on a time axis. And the first thing that we want to do is bring visibility into Terraform deployments by that organizations do. And I'm going to explain very technically what this first column means, right? We're going to have a remote state backend. We're going to have visibility for all these roles, and we're going to have subscription-based governance. Now, what does that all mean? I'm going to give you. I thought I'd actually, sorry for that little glitch. I'll come back to this later. I first want to do, this is the slide that I was planning to go to. I'm going to talk a little bit about our early access program, because what was in that column is something that we plan to well, not GA, but bring to market in a controlled way via an early access program already in May. It's pretty soon, right? And of course, the reason why we're doing this call today is because to see if some of you are interested. Very like 10 seconds logistics overview. So it'll start in May, 3 months. You'll get a SaaS tenant ready to go. So you don't need to install anything. We'll give you a tenant. It'll be a standard technology and services feedback program with 2 special conditions. You need to meet with us every 2 weeks for feedback, because of course we want to see if you're using it, what what issues you run into. And if you like it, so if you continue to use it after your trial, that means you like it, then you are asked to do commercially reasonable efforts to do a public success story, right? So that's all we're asking here. Now let's see what you get and how it works, right? So what we're planning to do in the May timeframe is implement what is called a remote state backend for Terraform. And this is a little bit technical. It depends a little bit how familiar you are with Terraform, but if developers run Terraform apply, they create what is called Terraform state. And that's kind of the memory of Terraform. And in a nutshell, it only scales if you have a network-based location, so a shared location where that state is stored. That is called a remote state backend for Terraform. So it's very important to have a remote state backend for Terraform. You cannot, let's just say, you cannot use Terraform in any meaningful way, except to do demos, but in any production way without a remote state backend. So we're gonna create a remote state backend in Hcmx out of the box, right? So if you install Hcmx or you buy it as SaaS, it'll be there for you, ready to consume. You don't need to set anything up. So your developers can just start using Hcmx as a remote state backend, which also means of course, we're the state owner here, right? Hcmx is the state owner. And a little question that I have, and we jump to poll question 6, is would that be okay with you? All right, so if you go to I skipped question 5, I'll come back to that. But we're a little bit curious to learn. So it's outgoing HTTPS if you're in SaaS. So normally it shouldn't be an issue, but if you have any issues with that, we're very curious to learn about that, right? So if you have no issues, you can not answer, or you can say no issues like this. If you'd be okay with using our Hcmx as a Terraform state backend. Now that's perfect for getting started, right? But a lot of organizations already use Terraform, and I would say the leader in backends right now, especially if they're using AWS already, are AWS buckets, right? So simple AWS storage, which works as well. Now, of course, how do we get the state into Hcmx? We would have Hcmx configure a little Lambda function that actually intercepts the state here before it goes in the bucket, makes a copy, sends that copy to us, and now we have a copy of your state. That gives us enough for what we want to do, right? So for us, that's just perfect if we have the copy. And we can do it in a couple ways. The most elegant way is with a Lambda function. So naturally, second question we have is, would you have any issue with that? If we configure, or we have Hcmx configure, right? We want to make it easy for you. Push a button and Hcmx will configure the Lambda. That's the ideal situation. And then that Lambda will simply, take the state that you're already pushing into AWS, but would copy it, send it to Hcmx, and then we would have that copy to do all the good stuff that we're going to show next, right? So it's question 7. Here, and then you can say no issues. I'll give you a little bit of time, maybe. Alex, do we have the full hour, or is this a 45-minute thing?
Oh no, you have full hour.
Good.
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah. I would like to leave some room for discussion as well. All right. So this is how it technically will work, right? And we're going back to this slide here, right? Because so far you say, yeah, that's great, but what does that give us if we participate in your early access program? Well, let's talk about that. And I'm going to, in the next time I use a slide, I'm going to invert this arrow here, because now we have all this state, or the copy of the state. It's good enough. We're going to suck it in this subscription layer that we have, because as we established earlier, almost all the problems around governance and management can be solved by the subscription model, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to wrap all that Terraform state into subscriptions, and that already gives us something like this, right? Because what we see here is a concept view of what Anne would see. She would see, so for her team, every Terraform deployment, every workspace that's being used here, she would see who created it, when was it created. There's a column hidden here that is modification date. So you would see, has it been recently modified? If it hasn't been recently modified, probably means people are not using it anymore. She can see what the business purpose is, and very important, she can get an indication here of the cost, right? Because again, if she gets that mail where that tells her basically, hey, can you take a look at why you're going over budget? She wants to look at the most expensive things first, right? You want to sort things on what is probably giving us the most costs, right? So she's going to be able to very efficiently dive down in what her team is doing, and send a mail to Steve saying, hey, Steve, this thing here, do you still need it? And then Steve will have the same view, or similar view, sorry, not this one, but a similar view. I will be able to say, oh crap, this is from 6 weeks ago. I forgot to clean that up. Let me clean it up right now. Yeah. So this is Anne's view. And again, what we want to learn a little bit on this call, if you have time or inspiration, to fill in this question, you saw some information. You saw the who, what, where, why, and also how much it costs. So if there's anything else that you would like to see in this view, we have a poll question for this. We can say basically it looks okay. If you don't have inspiration, but if you have ideas, then feel free to put something in here. I have some ideas for 9. I will share with you as an example. Right. This is not the right screen. This is the right screen. Yep. Now for David, he will have that same view, but for David, we want to do some extra stuff. Because remember, for David, it's all about compliance. Now, in phase 1, we're not yet going to block deployments like we showed earlier, right? That policy stuff that is coming in a later phase, and you'll see that when we go back to the roadmap. But in the MVP phase, so the minimal viable product phase that's starting in May, the early access, we at least want to give David a crystal clear view into what's going on. Yeah. So he's going to see all these deployments here. He's going to be able to see who did it, and again, when, where, all that information. And he's going to, when you click on such a deployment, we want to make it easy for him to get a topology view like this, so that David can at least see, hey, these guys, what are they doing? He clicks on it, he gets this topology view, and he can see, oh, no, what they're doing here, that is not right. So he can go talk to them and say, no, what you're doing there, it's not going to fly, right? You need to change that, right? And there will be some widgets here on top. You see an example here, instant state summary. I have one on my wish list that I want to add, which is I would love to see of all these deployments, for instance, 40% is in AWS, 20% is in Azure, and the rest is in Google. Like I would want to, or the rest is on-premise VMware. Right? I would want to see that kind of a breakdown. Where are people deploying things? And then you can click on that and drill down. So you can go wild in the question here. So if you see, oh yeah, this is cool, I would like to see this and that, just type things that you think you would want to see. And we'll leave the poll open for if after this call you have some time and you want to think a little bit and put some stuff here, we will leave this poll open for some time after today's presentation. Yep. So you have time to submit. Yeah. So that is what we want to do. Let me bring it back here. Oh yeah. So this is the question here. Yep, Alex, you want to interject?
There is one question. So let me read out, and you probably can answer. So the DWB would be installed on developer's laptop, or there would be a new UI in Hcmx. How and where would be the compliance policies defined?
Yep, the policies would be the good question to start with. The policies are defined centrally by IT, so for sure the policies are configured in Hcmx. DWB is installed on the developer laptop or on the machine executing the pipeline, because it wraps around the execution of Terraform. And I don't know, will DWB download the policies or send the code file and the policies will be evaluated centrally? I'm going to leave that to engineering. They will know what the best way is to do. But think as DWB as a referee that uses the policies to check the code file. But it will indeed be on the developer's laptop and on the machine that runs Jenkins typically, or in a container that is invoked by Jenkins. Does that answer the question, hopefully? All right. So what is then next? So again, the MVP, so the early access program, is this column here, right? So that wrapper DWB is not there yet. That wrapper comes here, right? Because that little demo that I did, that is the blue column here. So that is the furthest out. And we would like to learn a little bit. That's the question we skipped. So you saw me order secrets very easily, right? You DWB secret list, the secret store. Developers can order secrets by snapping their fingers, or these compliance guardrails, right? Because both of them are, well, they're both a bit of work. Let's let's put it that way. So we would kind of want to learn, if you have any idea, like what, and this is question 5. We're jumping back to 5. what you would want to see first. Maybe you say, well, actually, secret management is a bigger problem in our company, so you would select secret management. Or you say, no, we just bought something for that, and we have a vault, so I would have more use for those compliance guardrails. So then check the compliance guardrails. So they're two very different things. They're both necessary, but they're both very different, and we want to learn what is most urgent for you. Yeah, that's the first out. Then maybe just to complete the story, you're asking, yeah, what is this middle phase here, right? So what we will have, let's say, let me give an example. So we have these subscriptions here, and forgive me for not being in presentation mode. So let me go back to presentation mode. So let's say we have all these subscriptions now for developers. What you can already do very easily is, for instance, say everything that's being done by developers has a lifespan of 4 weeks, right? And then at 4 weeks, we will send the developer an email every day saying, hey, you need to clean this up. You need to clean this up. You need to clean this up. Until the developer goes in here and says, yeah, I want to extend my subscription, right? Because I need it for another 2 weeks. And we can tie an approval workflow into that and everything. And that's something that we plan for the MVP. Now, what we plan to do, so let me jump out of here, otherwise I need to go slide by slide. What we want to do here is automate the cleanup in that phase 2, where if when a developer doesn't answer that mail, basically that probably means they don't need it anymore. So we're going to have Hcmx clean it up automatically. And we can do this because we have the Terraform state, right, or a copy. But this requires that Hcmx now runs Terraform to clean it up, and that's a bit more work. So this is why this is in an intermediate phase. Yeah. So I hope that gives you a good idea on like a roadmap and why certain things, why we do it this way, right? Because this is kind of the foundation where we build that state backend. We have the state that almost automatically gives that visibility. Then we enhance automated cleanup, which again ties into FinOps, right? Because it means that you clean up things that otherwise would cause unnecessary costs. This is also, by the way, very much close to link to FinOps because we have the subscription and we know how much it costs. We can tie it back to the business budgets with the financial module of SMAX, well, of Hcmx. It's shared that we have, right? So all these things that the developers are doing are mapped back to budgets and cost centers. And then that third phase, those are the things that are most work. So that's why they're logically they're first out. So it's the secret store and the compliance guardrails. So I'm going to open up for questions. We're 7 minutes out, and while we do that, I'm going to put up the slide for the early access program, because if any of you are interested, we're very interested in talking to you if you want to give this thing a spin starting in May. So let's see if there are any questions. Let's open the discussion.
Yeah, good. Let me unmute all the participants so they can ask questions if they want to.
If you don't have questions, just feel free to go to the poll and take some time to fill out the answers.
Yeah, and please unmute yourself, and you should be able to ask any questions. I have unmuted all the line from my end, so yeah, you should be able to.
And people here know where to reach us, right? If you have some internal conversations and you say, yeah, maybe we do want to participate. Yeah, I don't have it on the slide here, but HCM_PM. That's a very. Let me just put it on the slide here. So HCM_PM. I assume you all know this email address. If you're a regular visitor of this forum, and I'm just going to put it in the middle of the slide. So if you send an email to this address, it will for sure reach us. Okay. Any question coming in the chat?
Nope, so far no. But
Okay.
it was a great session, Joe. Thanks. It was really great, and I have put the handout in the handout section. So if you want to get more details, of course, you can refer to the handout. And like Joe mentioned, do reach out to us, and we should be able to even have a one-on-one conversation. And we are open for the design partner program. So if you're interested, yeah, please do let us know and we can engage. And we can also provide a special trial instance. I mean to see the SaaS trial instance for you to play with the product. And of course, once we get the beta level, and then we should be able to give for any trial purpose. Okay, so let me see if there are a few more questions. Okay, anything more you want to cover, Joe? Or
Nope.
if you're
Let's
done.
give people
Okay.
some couple minutes back. And yep, happy to hear from you. Email address is on the screen. So if you have any questions, just reach out, and we'll get them answered.
Excellent. I think then we can close the show for today. And thanks a lot for all your support. I mean, especially this technical forum. And I see a lot of, a lot of participation from the community. So thanks for being attentive. And yeah, so we will be uploading this recorded session in our community forum. So you can also share it, or of course you can watch it later and you can post any questions to us. Yeah. So yeah, great. Thanks a lot, and have a great day ahead, and stay safe. Thank you. Thanks, Joe.
Alex,
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Stay safe. Bye.
Hey, sorry, there is one question. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Alex and Joe, thanks for the presentation. It's great content. We'll come back to you in maybe tomorrow, because I have an opportunity exactly in this context with infrastructure as code. So this looks very good.
Perfect. Yeah, sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Hey, have a good rest of your day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.